We are on our way once again from Michigan down to Texas, and we decided to make a second stop in a city that we have visited before because we realize there's so many things to do and there's so much history here.
And it might surprise you to find out that that city is Little Rock, Arkansas. We passed through Little Rock a couple of years ago on our way to Texas. But the only thing we really did then was go to the state capitol because, well, we were checking off a state capitol. And we made a very quick drive-by of the Little Rock Central High School, the site of all the segregation, things back in, what was the 60s.
We did make a video about the state capitol, so I'll put a link in so you can see that. But on our trip planning this time, we decided maybe we should stop in Little Rock again because there is more here.
Yeah, we knew back a couple years ago that there was a lot more to see and do here, but we only had the one day, and so we wanted to put this back on our list. We still only had one day, but we crammed in a lot.
Well, we managed to find a harvest host. We're part of that program, and I'll put a link to that below, too, in case you don't know what that is. But you get to stay at different places like farms, wineries. This is a farmer's market, but actually behind us it's a well over 100-year-old building that was an orphanage at one time. It's been a lot of different things.
Yes, we are at the St. Joseph Center. It used to be the St. Joseph Home, the original orphanage from the Benedictine
monks,
sisters, something. Sorry, I'm not Catholic. I don't know any of that stuff. But yeah, over the years, it became a lot of different things. And then they were going to tear it down, and the community banded together and said, no, this is a gorgeous building. We're going to save it. Today, there's artists' studios inside. There's like an Airbnb. You can stay at the Harvest Host. They have animals here on property, goats, sheep, cows, and they have a farmer's market. They do special events throughout the year. So if you're in the Little Rock area, come check this place out if you're stopping by. Unfortunately, it's Christmas break and they're closed while we're here. But we got to help feed the goats yesterday and kind of just wander around the property.
Two of the big things that we did here are two of the main draws to Little Rock, and that is the Bill Clinton Presidential Library and the old Statehouse, which is now a museum.
Similar to us checking off state capitals, we also find it fascinating to go to the places where there's presidential libraries and museums. We've done Ford's in Grand Rapids, we've done Johnson's in Texas, and so we wanted to check off the Clinton one as long as we were in town. And it's pretty interesting. No matter whether you like or dislike a president for political reasons, it's always just fascinating to see their history, their childhood, their rise to the presidency, what their life was like, who they met with, the different bills that they passed, where they traveled to, what the first ladies and the first families were like. So I just find that we're history nerds. So that stuff is fascinating, again, no matter which side of the political aisle you are on.
Yeah, and, from a history standpoint, it is always interesting to see what was going on during their presidency. I mean, his would have been during, the mid to late 1990s, and it was sort of a flashback for us to think about, wow, has it been that long? And some of the things that I saw, I'm like, gosh, I forgot all about that happening during the Clinton presidency. And so, yeah, it was interesting to see that, and we had a good chuckle a few times over the technology that they were talking about, and it was at a time when one of his initiatives was to make sure that at least a couple of times a month, a number of schools were able to connect to the World Wide Web so that, kids would have access to the internet, but how things have changed.
Yeah, there was a lot of references to connectivity to technology and the internet back then, and that was kind of funny. And one of the best exhibits for me was the AmeriCorps exhibit because I used to work for the Michigan Community Service Commission and oversaw Michigan's AmeriCorps programs, and Bill Clinton started that. And so that was a nice exhibit for me to see. And just, as I said, I just love all the little artifacts and the collectibles and the gifts the state gifts that are presented back and forth from all the different countries. And anyways, it was just really interesting.
Yeah, and I say a lot of times you find out about the people behind the politics on this kind of a trip. When you go to a presidential library, we learn about, Bill Clinton's family life and how he grew up and got into politics very early and why and things that he did. And then about Hillary's background, Hillary Clinton, that we did not know. So it's just really interesting to kind of learn about the people. And like I said, whether you agree with the politics or not, it's just an interesting thing to see. A major part of our country is the presidency and how that comes together. And then it's amazing also to see the collection of papers that come from a presidency, and they have boxes and boxes on display. And I think they said it's 80 million pages would be the total. And that includes everything. Every time somebody writes to the president, to the administration, they keep all that stuff. You had a fun time looking at his daily calendar, his schedule, and they have that in notebooks. You can look at the president's daily schedule his whole time, which is also pretty fascinating.
Yeah, there are obviously replications in there, so there's nothing, they're like laminated replications. But yeah, I pulled up my birthday from one of the years to see what he was doing, and he was like serving supper at, because it was the holiday time, and so they were doing some charity supper thing. I pulled up some random dates, and it was like, oh, today you're giving a speech here, and today you're visiting over here, and somebody's coming to visit you. And it's pretty detailed. So you can go and pull out any day from 1992 to 1999, I think, and see, wherever he was on that given day. And they said there's also, like you said, the correspondence in the library and museum itself. There's a separate library portion where you have to have special permission and to get into the library. But the museum is, open to anybody. It's paid. But in the museum part, they just have these like stacks of these blue binder books. And that's literally just the correspondence. And they said it represents only 2% of the entire library collection, which is crazy.
Yeah, you can make an appointment and actually go in and go into the research library and get access to things there if that's something that you're interested in. Another little tidbit I thought was interesting was they broke down one of the state dinners that had been held, and they had this whole timeline of everything that goes on for months ahead of time with the social secretary and all the planning that goes into getting people there and what's served and how it's served, and that was pretty interesting to see.
Oh yeah, that was cool. It's a long months long process, but then a long day too, starting at like 6 a.m. and making sure that the rehearsal goes right and the right linens and the right forks are used, and that the military is in the right place for the escorts. And then at the very end, it was giving a time by time breakdown, and then we went from like 10:45 dancing to a very late night later. And so I have no idea. It was probably like 2 a.m. They were saying their goodbyes. But yeah, that was fascinating to see the day in the life of.
Yeah, and then they also have one of the presidential limousines there on display. They have a replica of the cabinet room and a replica of the Oval Office as it was set up during the Clinton presidency.
Overall, I just thought it was interesting. If you're in the area and want to stop by, I think it was $12 a person for adults, different prices, discounts for seniors, military, kids, but well worth it. And eventually the Clintons will be buried on the grounds there when it comes their time. And so they showed us where that area would be. Right now it's just a garden you can walk through, but eventually it will be closed off. So just, again, fascinating part of history.
As we mentioned earlier, we have been to the state capitol here in Little Rock, Arkansas, but the original state capitol, the old State House, is still surviving. It is now a museum. Thankfully, it has been preserved. It has a pretty incredible history all on its own. That building has been through a lot.
Oh my gosh. One of the things I found most fascinating was that the whole Capitol was just wrong from the beginning for a lot of reasons, both political and financially and a lot of things. But part of it was because once they hired an architect, and he was a famous architect that had done other state capitals up to that point, he made the designs, he sent the designs, but he never came to oversee the work. He sent like an apprentice. The apprentice was here for a year, and then he died, and then leaving somebody else in charge. They ran out of money. They realized the grand design of the original architect could never be completed due to the financial issues. So they completely scaled down the building. They removed certain elements. They put other elements in. So the capital that they got was not the capital that they were thinking they were going to get or requested. And as a result, it was too small from the beginning. They had to add on pieces and parts. And so none of the rooms connected. And in fact, you had to go outside the building to get back into other rooms that were next to each other. And so even today, the old State House is sort of a maze, and there are places where you can't get there from here because of the way it was constructed. So it was just hilarious, kind of walking through and reading all the signs about how they tried to piecemeal this capital together over the years and never did quite get it right.
Yeah, it was started in 1833. They said they got it done in 1836 in time for statehood for Arkansas to join the Union. The building has seen a lot of history, it becoming a state in the Union. That's where a vote was held for Arkansas to secede from the Union. There were troops on the ground, the Union troops, when they came into Arkansas, they ended up being on the grounds for a while. It has been used as the University of Arkansas medical research facility.
Yeah, there were cadavers and all sorts of things going on in the building at one point.
Yeah, but when it was used as a state capital in the beginning, it was too small, as you said from the beginning. So they ended up expanding part of it so that the House of Representatives had more room. But then there was a note in there about one of the maintenance engineers saying it needed a lot of work and they weren't giving him enough money to maintain it properly. And he was concerned. And the House and the Senate wouldn't vote to give more money in the budget. And then I think it was 1911, part of the Senate chamber ceiling fell on the senators. And they said the next day budget negotiations began and they started writing a bill to get some money to fix the building up.
That sounds about right. I know how that goes.
Typical government.
Yeah, at least they did eventually were able to preserve it. And, even though it went through, it was the War Department at one time, or I think something with the war. Then it was the auxiliary ladies. Then it was the medical center. It was a school. It was a lot of things. But eventually in like the 1940s, they all got together and said, we're turning this into a museum. And that's what it is today. It's still seen a lot of restoration over the years as different new techniques have come out. They've discovered new information about the building. And so today it houses some revolving exhibits. Depending on when you go, you'll see stuff about the first families. You'll see things about the legislators, important, prominent people in Arkansas's history. My favorite exhibit currently on display is the First Lady's inaugural grounds.
Say that fast 3 times.
First Lady's inaugural gowns.
There we go.
That are they're not required to hand them over, but it is highly suggested that they donate their inaugural gown to the collection. And they have them all going back to 1901. Oh, they're not all on display at the same time, and some of them are too fragile to be on display. But it was a very cool exhibit. But now that they have their first female governor and their first husband, they did say they're going to be revamping the exhibit to be a little bit more gender inclusive for that new development. But either way, the gowns are really cool, and I liked going through that and learning about their history.
I think you did decide you'd rather have been a first lady during the 1920s because the gowns were cooler than, say, the 1970s.
Yes, the flappers and the beads, and they were pretty cool.
There's a lot to see in that building, and you can spend some time in there. The original Supreme Court room is in there. That was locked. We didn't get to see that. They're working on that. It's a work in progress, even though it's been restored. I'm just excited that so many different groups got together over the years to say, let's preserve this. And now part of the display is there's period rooms. So they've set them up for different periods of time through Arkansas's history, and each one is dedicated to the main groups that got together to preserve that building. So that was kind of a neat way to do that. But it's kind of the house that Jack built when you walk around that place.
Yeah. Well, and they've got just different artifacts too. So sitting on the grounds is an old cannon that was used during the Civil War. And in fact, that cannon used to sit basically on the site of where the Clinton Presidential Library is today, at an old house that is now torn down. But it was kind of, when you think about all the history and how it's all connected, that old house sat next to the not Union Pacific, but it was the Rock Island Railroad Station, which is still there and is now part of the Presidential Library, and then the foundation. But they moved the cannon to the Statehouse grounds, and so Little Rock's history is all intertwined, interconnected. So if you get here, you kind of got to go around a different parts of the city in order to see it all.
But it's not a huge city.
No.
So it's not a bad drive. And we're actually in North Little Rock right now, and then there's Little Rock across the river, but it's an easy drive to get around. It's a really interesting city when you look at it from a historical standpoint. I should mention the old Statehouse Museum is free. So you can get in there and see that for no charge. You have to pay to see the Clinton Presidential Library. But there's, Little Rock has a really nice zoo, too, if you have the time. We ended up going to a nighttime lights display. We didn't have a chance to go during the day. I suspect we'll be back in Little Rock again, knowing how much you like zoos and how you kept saying, no, I want to come back during the day.
Yeah, it's the holiday time, so it was glow lights, Glowild. I think it's called Glowild. And they call them lanterns. We didn't know what that meant. I was picturing like little luminaries, or not Chinese lanterns. No, there's these giant. They call them lanterns. They're giant caricatures or characters, animals, things made out of like cloth and metal and lights, and I don't know, they were really cool. Some of them moved, some of them sparkled, but that was really cool. I'm glad we did that because it was something unique that we might not, probably maybe wouldn't see other places. I don't know.
I don't know. And we got a glimpse of the zoo, and so we have an idea of what would be there during the day, and I suspect we'll be back. So
oh, and the really cool carousel. Oh, you should mention the carousel.
Yes, there is this old-fashioned, they think there's only a handful of or less left in the world right now, and it's a carousel that instead of the horses themselves going up and down, the whole thing moves on a track up and down.
It's like what you'd see at like a carnival on a little kiddie ride where like the little cars kind of go on a track like this, but in a circle. I've just never seen a carousel do that.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
That was really neat. There's a lot to check out in Little Rock. I think we were surprised the first time we came through, and we were pleasantly surprised the second time to say, yeah, there is still plenty to do here. So if you get a chance.
Oh, one more thing. We forgot about the old mill.
Oh, that's in North Little Rock. See, there's so many things to do here. There is the old mill in North Little Rock. That was built in the 1930s. It was never actually used as a grist mill, but it was designed to look like it would have been, and it's pretty legit. It's just a really pretty little area on the river there.
Right, and it was used in the opening scene of Gone with the Wind. So if you're familiar with that, check it out and then come here and visit it and you'll see it in person. But yeah, it was really more just designed to be a attraction, but it is really pretty, and there were a ton of people there yesterday morning because as you can see behind us, it's a little foggy and cloudy. It's been like this for days. We just got lucky, super lucky yesterday, and it was 60 degrees, blue skies, and sun. So for all our walking around in our pictures, that's why you'll notice the discrepancy between our background today and our background yesterday.
It really is just the next day. It's not weeks later.
No, this is what we woke up to this morning.
Yeah. So, and we need to get on the road and keep on moving along towards Texas. So if you get a chance, check out Little Rock, Arkansas. There's a lot more here than you might realize. In the meantime, keep on trekking.
And we'll see you out there.